What is this thing we've got in the sky? Lovely day today. Right, I know you're all here for the S4 content, but today I'm going to be whipping the turbo off this old Volvo. I've got a track day book which I booked for the S4. I really don't think it's going to be ready yet, so I've got to get this thing up and running. Runs and drives alright, but it's got a massive blow in the exhaust. I think it is either from the manifold or the turbo or both. So I'm going to make a start on that now. Just got to turn it around, park in front of the garage and get this done really. So here we are. So 2-litre turbo engine. It has forged rods in it, and it has a Chinese GT2871R on it. 3-inch V-band outlet on there. And yeah, runs alright. The XR injectors in it, and basically tuned by adjusting the boost. So there's not actually that much in there. You know, like my little idle control there because something's not working, but I have been for a while thinking about putting this on standalone management. I did have one of these before that did have VEMS on it running standalone, and that was over 400 horsepower. This one power wise probably 300 maybe, no idea to be honest, but it's been quite good, been quite reliable. Other than when it threw a cam belt and trashed the head, that wasn't so good. But yeah, since then it's been okay. But in there, that's where I've got to whip off this turbo and manifold. Right, so I have quickly whipped off the heat shield so I can see what's going on down there, and it's fairly obvious where it's blowing. It's exactly where I thought it would be. You can see just in there where the turbo meets the flange. You'll notice that the way this is done is very budget. This is the standard manifold. Cut some of the existing flange off, made a little transition pipe, a T25 flange welded to that, and part of the reason is the flange has got a bow in it. And I think the turbo has actually, both the turbo and the manifold flange need facing off properly. I didn't have the bench sander previously when I first did this, so it's just been chucked on there. It has blown in the past in exactly the same place, but yeah, I'll whip all of this off and see how bad it is. But yeah, I am in two minds whether to keep this set up. It works well enough, but if I look over there, I do have two HX40 turbos sat around. It's not the one that I'm using, which is there. These are spare turbos, probably just need a refresh with a new bearing kit in there, and that would be good to go on to that. At the minute, like I say, that is running standard management. It has been mapped in the past for a T4 spec turbo, which is slightly larger turbo than what was standard on this engine. This engine is actually a T4 engine. It's not the original engine that came in this car. I didn't install it, so the previous owner did. He didn't actually realise it was a T4 engine, put a T4 turbo on it, got it mapped, and he played things quite safe. But since then I've put forged internals in it anyway. So I am thinking maybe chuck the HX40 in there, and stick it on some standalone management. What do you think? Almost got this out now. Want to see?
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Can you see it?
Yeah. No, I can't.
No, you can't.
What's this, Daddy? What's this, Daddy? What's this, Daddy? Go.
Okay guys, you joined me a day or so later back in the garage. Things have got a little bit out of hand in a short amount of time. So obviously I was looking at possibly putting a whole set on the Volvo. Instead of really thinking about it, I've kind of just going for it. So one of the possible issues with the whole set is that it is going to spool quite late in the rev range because it's quite a large turbo. It's got a 16cm turbine housing on it. That's all I was going to use because both the turbos have got a 16cm housing. The one that is being used on the Saudi, that originally was I think it was an 18 or 19cm housing, so a huge thing. But I've got a Turbo Labs turbine housing on that. I can't remember what the AR of that one is. It's not in centimetres, but it's AR similar to the Garrett's. So in there you can see the standard Volvo manifold is a split pulse, or divided if you want to call it that, and that actually really aids spool up. The turbine housing is a split pulse divided, so I'll be making the most of that just so it will spool a little bit quicker. Supposedly that makes quite a lot of difference, so I'd be silly not to. Because this is a divided housing, the internal wastegate will only obviously vent from one half of the divided inlet. You tend to get on these when you use the internal wastegate. I mean, firstly, that is quite a small port there for the wastegate, and it is only flowing half of the exhaust gases. So what you tend to get is people throw these on, use the internal wastegate, and they creep to hell. Because I want to make this as quick and easy and as cheap as possible, it just so happens that I've got somewhere an external wastegate. All I'm doing, cutting a hole in the top of the turbine housing, and I will then mount this wastegate directly to it. I'm obviously going to have a flange to it, made of starch, so this will get welded to here, flange will get welded to that, and then I can bolt that directly to the turbine housing. So that'll be fairly neat, and then from here that'll go straight out and join into the manifold. So that'll be a nice short run, and hopefully deal with boost creep issues, or potential boost creep issues. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to be using the plate that's going on there, which is that 3 1/4 inch V-band. Not particularly common, so I've got 3 inch. The car already has a 3 inch V-band on it, so that would be the easiest thing to do, quickest thing to do. Weld that directly on there, and hopefully the existing exhaust downpipe will just clamp straight to it. That's the plan anyway. We will see how that goes. So I'm going to crack on with this, because no time like the present. We are through. Now I don't for one second think that smashing down on that with a bolster on one side is going to do anything, but for the sake of satisfying my curiosity, I'm going to give it a go. I would not have believed that that would work. There you go. Well, that was worth a punt. That saved a shitload of time. There we go. That is what we're looking at. Yeah, I think something along those lines will work. Before I can weld any of that on, I need to make sure I know where this flange is going, what orientation it is going in the engine bay, because this is quite tight. The engine's here, the bulkhead's here. So this is the manifold I was using. Gonna cut that bad boy off. Excellent. So there you go. That is the divider that I was talking about. The only issue with this is obviously you can see that it is on the piss. So I've actually bought two T3 flanges. One's divided, the other one is standard T3 non-divided. And the plan is to put them on top of one another, so have the non-divided first and then the divided second. Obviously the divided will match exactly with the turbo, and then I'll have the thickness of that flange, which is 12mm, to get from this angle to straight. So I'm going to try and get a piece to go in there like that, and then twist it round straight by the time it gets from the non-divided flange to the divided flange. Don't think that's going to be particularly easy, but we shall give it a go. So you can see here, that is what I need to make for a divider. So essentially, on one side I have this, which is that, obviously flipped over. That matches up with that there, and then that will sit inside that. So one side will be like that, the other side will be like that, and that should hopefully match up with this. So like that. And then both these flanges, well, this flange will then have this piece welded into it, and then this flange will get welded to this flange like that. So it'll be a nice 25mm thick flange. They'll get welded together, and then that will get welded to this. So that is the plan actually. I think that's the best way of doing things. I was thinking about, you know, putting bits of plate in there to angle the exhaust flow, but I think this is a much better way of doing it. So I am going to have a go at grinding that. And there we go. That is basically a propeller. So there's that S-bend that side, and if I flip over, straight divide, and it's like a corkscrew, and that sits flat on there like that. And this needs a bit more of a fettle, but there you go. That is there or thereabouts. The only thing that I have not miscalculated, because it just, from what I've got here scrap wise, I didn't have any 12mm thick plate, so all I'm going to do is weld this to this face here to that level, and then there'll be a 2mm gap here, which is fine, because that will that can get built up with a bit of weld in there. So that's come out really well. Pleased with that. So once that's all welded up, there's nothing actually stopping me from bolting the turbo to the car, so that's pretty good. I've just cut all of these excess bits off the turbine housing, where the wastegate flapper was, just big bulky bits off here which aren't required, and I ground all this flat, so I will be putting a nice V-band on there, welding that on, so that'll connect directly to the exhaust, which is already on the car. So I'm going to flat wheel all this, smooth all the cut edges, make that a bit nicer, and I also cut a few extra bits off this. Whilst I am talking about cutting and grinding, I have been using a new supplier for my ultra thin cutting discs, and it is a company called My Consumables. Now, cutting all of that off took a very long time, and you can see I've gone through. One wheel was already partially used, so 1, 2, 3, and the fourth wheel there. And I only changed these ones here because I needed the newer blade to get all the way in here. And it took me, I'll probably say, a good hour to cut all those bits off. And normally that would have taken considerably more than, if I was able to use all of these, probably done it in 2 discs. So yeah, really impressed with them. That's not a paid ad. I have actually spent my own money on these. Not that they're expensive, they're really well priced. And they seem to be doing the business. I've got some flat wheels which are well priced as well. I think they're about 75p each, when you're normally paying over £1 for them, a couple of pounds sometimes. And yeah, they really do seem to work. I think these, can't remember how much they were, probably about maybe even 30p each, something like that. Really cheap, and work really well. Right, I've been cracking on with this. I've got a fair bit done. Didn't film too much, so what I've got here is the housing all cleaned up. That is a 3-inch V-band, and I've machined a little lip in there so it just centres itself on there nicely, so I'll be able to get a nice decent weld all the way around that. And I've also cut a small little disc out of some steel, and that will get welded to that. Okay, that looks pretty good. That is not exactly vertical, that's fine, because I've also taken the die grinder to this as well, taken the inside out of there and the opposite side there, so that then gives the final bit of twist, and that gets welded to the flange. So at the minute this flange is just tacked on just so I could get this positioning right. I'm now going to whip that off so I can get all round this divider, make sure it's fully welded, and then this flange goes back on and that gets welded onto that. Excuse all the mess behind me. I've just been rushing forwards with all of this and not bothered to tidy up as I normally do, but I'm going to get this welded now. So there we go. That has had 2 passes. The second one was almost maxing out the machine, so that is on there, welded the inside as you can see, and you can see that divide. That is just the single plate. I've not actually gone ahead and welded this plate to here. I'm not entirely sure it needs it, to be honest. I'm going to quickly stick that in the car and see where that hangs the turbine housing. Houston, we have a massive problem. Right, there you go. You can see turbine housing on the manifold, which initially looks quite good because this is the existing downpipe and that fits on there. However, it's quite low and really it wants to be around about where the other turbo sat, so there's quite a height difference. And then we come over this side and I've just put the centre housing on there, and here you can see that is quite low and there is no chance of this fitting on there without hitting the gearbox. So it's too low, and the reason why that isn't working like the other turbo did is because if I dig out this piece, you can see there was, instead of being straight like this one is, it was kicked up like that, which raised the whole thing a few inches. So that's a bit of a pain in the ass really. So I'm gonna have to take that off and see what I can do. I'm not entirely sure what at the moment. I don't know whether it's a case of cutting that flange off altogether, which has been a challenge to get on there. So back to the drawing board. Cunts. Right guys, about a week has passed since I last cut that flange off, and I've been going through a few different options of how to get the angle correct on the next flange. I've also been waiting for a new divided flange to turn up. One of the options that I had was to actually cut this on the bandsaw, which I was quite impressed with, was to cut the flange like that into a wedge. Like I say, I managed to do that on the bandsaw. It's a Clark one, which a lot of people don't rate, but that's come out, you know, bang on. But it didn't work, and that was a waste of whatever that cost. And today I thought I'd have another quick look at it, and I basically bolted the manifold onto the engine, loosely bolted the turbo together without the internals, just for mocking up, put it in there with the flange cut off and tried to see whereabouts I could put it, and it turns out that I wouldn't have been able to angle it at all, to be honest, because of the size of the hot side. Basically putting angle on it would hit the bulkhead, not so much the bulkhead, but there's some brake lines there, and I don't really want to be boiling fluid with a red hot turbine housing sat right next to it, so I wanted to get as much distance away from that as I could. So it's still flat on the manifold, it's not angled, but what I've done is kind of offset it. I basically ported it with the Dremel to get a bit of angle. So this is what we've got at the minute. So this edge here is the flange that I cut, and you can see that this bottom piece here would have been the same height as this, so I've actually managed to get probably about 7mm offset, so it's basically raising the turbo 7mm, and that gives me the clearance that I need. So it is very tight with the compressor housing and the gearbox, but that is just enough for me to get clearance, and I can weld all the way around that, and that works fine. And I don't know whether you can see that, all this has been ported out here, and I've ported this flange on the underside here, so it's nice and smooth, so there shouldn't be any issues with that. It's time now to fully weld this, and then I suppose it's then good to bolt on the car. Okay guys, I'm going to end the video right there. I hope you've enjoyed the Volvo content. Makes a bit of a change, and we will be catching up with this very soon. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers, bye.